Hey, what's up everyone? So, new video today, and as you can see, it's another video with a guest because I am with Donny Wals today. So, welcome, Donny.
Hello.
Great to have you, Donny, back on this channel. And we are going to talk about an exciting topic today because we are going to talk about Combine and more specifically the cancelable, any cancelable, and everything that revolves basically about this app. That is, well, a big, like a pillar of Combine, but at the same time, we don't always know like what to think of it.
Yep, pretty much, yeah. So let's get right into some code. I've seen a lot of people do this, right? Let subscription equals, let's start URL session, shared data task, publisher for. That's some string. To YouTube today, youtube.com.
So we're going to download something from the network.
Yep. And I think a lot of folks have written code like this. I mean, the important part isn't what we're doing here exactly. The important part here is this. Let subscription equals, and then I have a publisher and I subscribe to it. What's your thoughts on that, Vincent?
So the combined code looks good, but it's true that this word subscription is basically like, in a way, it comes out of nowhere because you don't see this word anywhere in the return type of the function. It's more like, yeah, I have subscribed to something, so I need to call my variable. Let's call it the subscription for lack of a better word.
Yeah, exactly. But then when we look at what the type of subscription is, it's any cancelable. So what a lot of people think and what a lot of people say is, well, any cancelable is just a subscription, right? It's just a thing that connects your publisher to a subscriber. Because if we just take this publisher here and we say let publisher equals something, and then the subscription equals publisher.sync, right? This makes a lot of sense. You have a publisher, you have a subscriber.
Yeah.
Nothing special. For the type for this publisher is a data task publisher. So data task publisher sync. This is still any cancelable. So it's more than just a subscription, right? Although a subscription does sound like something you can cancel, but it's any cancelable is a little bit more mystical than that. And like you say, it's a cornerstone of Combine because you need to keep them around in order to keep that subscription alive. Because if you don't keep that any cancelable around, the subscription will be torn down. Because if I would write this code, and I would say, let's take the output from this. This is, of course, not the best example anymore in iOS 15, right? Because we should do this with async await. But I'm going to go ahead and just run some combine code that doesn't network call anyway. But the output of this is going to be nothing. Why is it nothing, Vincent? Can you tell me that?
Well, I don't know a lot of Combine, but I know a lot of Eric Swift, so I can like like match the patterns. And so here we have our publisher, so we are syncing, so we're giving it an observer, but we are not storing what is returned by sync. So actually, like, I'm surprised that Swift didn't give us a warning because basically what's happening is that no one is storing the subscription, and subscription is actually like, well, it's not alive because there is no one like saying that it should be kept alive.
Exactly, because this returns an any cancelable, and I'll get into some documentation in a moment, but when this any cancelable is not kept around, then we're not subscribed. So if I change to this, if I say let cancelable equals publisher sync, now we should, there we go, we will get an output. So that means that now our subscription or our cancelable was kept around. And to learn more about why that is and what it does, we should probably look at what any cancelable is.
Yeah.
So if I pull up the documentation here, I'm not going to read this just yet. I want to look at something else first because it conforms to a protocol, and the protocol is cancelable. So let's look at that first, because maybe we should talk a little bit about what any cancelable means, right? Because that's type erasure. We have things like any view in Swift UI or any, what else do we have? Any publisher, right? There's a bunch of any prefix things in Swift, and those are type erase objects. So it's typically an object that wraps something that conforms to a protocol, but we want to hide what it really is, right? So this is a cancelable, but we want to hide what cancelable exactly is it. So to learn more, we're going to start by looking at cancelable first. And this is somewhat of a weird description, and that's why I wanted to look at it first. It said a protocol indicating that an activity or action supports cancellation in the Combine framework. Calling cancel frees up any allocated resources. It also stops side effects such as timers, network access, or disk I/O. So if we keep that in mind, if we keep cancelable in mind here, and we go back to our playground, then we don't want to support cancellation, really. Like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
What I want to do is just call the network thing and get a result. I would like to write this. So why does it not work? And why do I need this cancelable that supports cancellation that I don't even want to use? To figure that bit out, we need to look at AnyCancellable, because AnyCancellable implements the cancelable protocol, which means that we could, if we wanted to, say cancelable or cancel. But if at any point we want to consciously stop listening to the output of this network call, stop any work it's doing, free up any resources, we can call cancel. And it's safe to assume that any objects that we are using will be freed up.
Yeah, like an example would be maybe, so we are downloading a big file from the network. On the UI, there is a button to actually cancel the download, and it would be mapped to this cancel method.
Exactly. Or if maybe we want to subscribe to some property, right? Some property on a model that increments a counter until the counter's 10. And after that, we're no longer interested in subscribing to this object. You could call cancel on the cancelable, and then it will stop listening. And it will tell the publisher that there's now one fewer listener. And if there's any resources allocated for this cancelable, it'll be freed up. So any cancelable is a type erasing cancelable object that executes a provided closure when canceled. Now that's interesting because we don't provide any closure to our cancelable here. Right? So that is apparently done within the sync function. So the sync function creates this AnyCancellable object for us. And apparently that sync function will pass a closure to our AnyCancellable. Now what's interesting is subscriber implementations can use this type to provide a cancellation token that makes it possible for a caller to cancel a publisher, but not to use the subscription object to request items. An AnyCancellable instance automatically calls cancel when deinitialized. And that's where the interesting part comes in. Right? An AnyCancellable instance automatically calls cancel when deinitialized.
Basically, like what I understand from this is that it's not just a type erase wrapper, it's also a mechanism to ensure that cancel is always going to be called like no matter what, and we just need to work with this mechanism.
Exactly. And also what's interesting in the beginning is subscriber implementations can use this type to provide a cancellation token. Right? So when you implement a subscriber, you can return this AnyCancellable to allow the caller of that subscribe function, so the caller of sync that we have here, this function returns not a subscription, it returns something that allows us to cancel the subscription. That subscription could be in there, it might be, it's an AnyCancellable, so we don't know what's inside. But what's important is that we can use it to cancel things. And what's even more important is that whenever that AnyCancellable is deallocated, our cancel method on that AnyCancellable is called, which means that all the resources will be freed up. So if we go back to that first state where we didn't get any output, whenever we don't store the return value of a function, that value is discarded. In other words, it's deallocated. It's not going to be kept around. Why should it be kept around if nobody is holding on to it? And so that's why the network call didn't work at all.
Yeah, actually, like it was basically the equivalent of no up, basically.
Exactly. And now we can get into why this is very useful for Combine and why this is so important in Combine. Because again, I want to show it one more time. An AnyCancellable instance automatically calls cancel when deinitialized. So whenever an AnyCancellable does not have a strong reference to, let's say, a self object, so if it's not keeping something else alive, then that something else can be deallocated, which means that all of the members on that class or struct will be deallocated, which means that the subscription will be torn down. Let me write that out actually. So let's say class myFetcher. If we say func, or we'll have a cancellables set here, just a set that's going to hold on to AnyCancelables. I'll implement the dinit function so that we can actually see whenever this thing is deinitialized. Print dinit. And we'll say func subscribe or fetch data. I'll just put this code that I have right in here. So when I now subscribe to this publisher and I say store in cancellables, and I'll say let fetcher equals myFetcher. I'll call fetcher fetch data. You should see output now.
Yeah.
That's good. However, if I now say fetcher is an optional and a variable, right after calling fetch data, I'll set fetcher to nil. What will happen now is that we need to unwrap this. Now our dinit is only printed, right? No output is printed. And now we can do a fun little trick to see that this still works, is we're going to capture self strongly.
So we're creating a retain cycle on purpose.
Exactly, on purpose. Now we should, I should probably use self in here too. Now we will see the network call complete first. And after that, this closure will be released, right? Because the publisher completes, which means that there's no further output, which means that the publisher itself will clean up any resources. This is also a fun little exercise in seeing that when a publisher completes, it will free up resources, because now it let go of this closure that we had here, which means that nobody is referencing self anymore, which means that self can deinitialize, which also means that this set of cancellables will be deinitialized and that everything will be discarded. However, this right here, just catch yourself weekly, this is super useful because now we can clean up after ourselves automatically without needing to worry about our cancellables or any in-progress observations of any publishers.
Yeah, that's really the way I see it, is that the AnyCancellable, it's a way to tie the lifetime of a subscription to the lifetime of another object, be it an instance of my feature or whatever you need it to be.
Exactly, yeah. So most typically it will be to the owner of the function that you call to do something. But we could tie it to some completely other object if we wanted to, right? Because we'll just put the cancelable wherever we want to put the life cycle. Because for example, let's take this example a little bit further. We could say var cancelable here, right? I'll just call it var c, and it'll be an AnyCancellable. It'll be optional. And instead of assigning it to my set here, I'm going to say c, which is in the global scope.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assign it to that. And you'll notice now the network call still completes, even though the myFetcher is deinitialized. We can see that. But because that cancelable is now tied to the life cycle of my playground, it's never canceled.
Yeah, and actually, I could imagine this use case also in an app where, well, just like I said before, you're starting downloading a big file, like a movie from some streaming app. So you're starting download in a specific view controller, but you want to be able to cancel it from anywhere. So probably it would be some kind of manager or higher level view in the hierarchy that would hold to the cancelable.
Yeah, or you want to keep the download going even when you move away from that view controller, because that
Also.
download should, be managed somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's AnyCancellable. I think we summed it up nicely like this. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking also, so from the part I know Eric Swift, of course I have to say that this is basically the kind of the equivalent of the dispose bag, and so
It
the
is, yeah,
disposable, yeah.
disposable.
And once again, it goes to show like just how close these two frameworks are on some key aspects.
Yeah, I mean the ideas behind them are very, very similar, if not the same, right? They have slightly different ideas about some details, but they're mostly the exact same thing, just packaged differently.
So just like you said, Donny, so AnyCancellable, it's a way to basically manage the lifetime of a subscription. And of course, if viewers will want to learn more about AnyCancellable or any other topic about Combine, I know that you both have a blog with articles about the topic, but you've also written a book, so Practical Combine. I'm sure it's appearing somewhere on the screen because I have added it during editing. So maybe you want to tell us a few words about it?
Yeah, so I have several posts on my website about Combine, like getting started, but also a post called What's Inside of an AnyCancellable, where we basically explore everything we talked about today. My Practical Combine book covers Combine from A to Z, so it starts you off with the basics, and it helps you to get started with Combine as soon as possible. I am working on updating it for iOS 15, even though Apple didn't really change much for Combine. I want to kind of phrase it a little bit better with async await in the back of my mind, because of course async await will change a little bit of where Combine will be commonly used if you are targeting iOS 15 plus.
So as always, all the links to see Donny's blog, Donny's book, they are all just down there in the description. You can go check them out. And I think I just have to say, well, Donny, thank you for this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.